So I'm not a Denver native. I was born and raised in North Carolina, but my father, as well as a number of his brothers and sisters, he was one of 10 children, all grew up in Northern California and were forced to flee California in early 1942 due to the executive order, requiring Japanese Americans to depart. And so my father and a number of his brothers and sisters all ended up in Denver. I've visited Denver a lot as a child because of all those family connections. And so I moved back here. I like to say that in a way, but for the racial prejudice that my extended family suffered, I might not be here because my connection to Denver was because of them. And they were here solely because they were kicked out of California. I can't say that's something that I grew up wanting to be a prosecutor. I knew I had a skill with public speaking. I've just always had a bit of the gift of gab. But I grew up in a pretty progressive community in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. My parents knew some attorneys who were defense attorneys, public defenders. And so I think I could very well have ended up there, to be honest. But I got an internship here at the district attorney's office in 1997 and just never left. I find the work incredibly rewarding because you really are helping people. It's also a constant intellectual challenge. Every single case is different. And I love the fact that no 2 days of work are exactly the same. There's always something new going on. It's improved in a lot of ways. But the laws have evolved overall in a positive way. I certainly have disagreements with some of the more recent changes to sentencing statutes and things like that. But one example, a concrete example I can give you is that when I started as a prosecutor, simple possession of drugs was a class 4 felony. In theory, carrying 2 to 6 years in prison. Now, I can't think of a case where someone went to prison solely for simple possession. I'm not saying that ever really happened, but at the same time, that was clearly disproportionate. Simple possession should not be on the same level with things like robbery, which was also a class 4 felony, second degree assault, those sorts of things. So I think the evolution of drug offenses over the years has been really interesting and overall a positive thing. So I think that it's important to look at crimes against Asian Americans in the context of crimes against vulnerable populations more generally, because the reality is that those who want to do harm to someone, either for a financial motive because they want to rob them or because they want to express their anger or whatever other motive they may have, they're going to seek out the target that they perceive as being the weakest. That's what criminals do, in my experience. In a sense, they're kind of bullies, and that violent criminals are bullies. They seek out the weak target. And the perception, I think, was that Asian Americans are a weaker target. I'm not sure it's really true, but I think that has been the perception. So I think the remedy really is to raise the profile of Asian Americans, and there have been, obviously in the media in the past year, that has really happened. That's been really heartening for people to acknowledge that this is a problem, that this particular group, my particular group, has been targeted. And the fact that is more prominent in the press and the media and in people's minds, I think ultimately will help, right? Because over time, that's hopefully going to perhaps cause offenders to rethink, whether to assault someone because of their heritage or their descent, and also may ultimately result in more severe sentences, for those who do. I think it's really important for prosecutors and really law enforcement more generally to correct some misperceptions about what we do and why we do it and how we do it. And I just think in order to attract people to this profession, be they of Asian American descent or of other ethnicity, I think it's just important that we correct some of those misperceptions. I think that minority groups often come from backgrounds where the government was not their friend. right? You know, there are certainly governments around the world, both those in Asian countries as well as others, where government doesn't do a good job of protecting the people at all, where sometimes government is the enemy, right? When they're corrupt and ineffective. And so I do think maybe there's a bit of a trust deficit from the outset among some of these minority communities. And the more we can do to just present the true face of what we do, over time, I really do think that's going to improve recruitment. The other thing to do, frankly, is just to be proactive. It's targeted recruitment, you know, as opposed to just waiting for applications to come in the door. You know, it's going to those conferences, you know, seeking to present at some of these minority law student and law school and legal, you know, communities, bar associations and the like, in order to just recruit.